What up, everybody? Scuffy here, and it is time to do some Dark Angels card by cards. That's what we've been looking forward to doing for quite some time. It's taken me a while to get to this point. Had to go through and do the card by card reboots of all of the factions. And Malevolence expansion is just about wrapping up. Following this raid event that we are on currently, Xana 2, and we'll get Scoria. We'll probably have one, maybe two flashback events. Then I anticipate, given past timing and history, we're probably going to get into the next expansion. So it's definitely worth taking a look. I think at this point, we might see one or two cards change. But as a whole, the faction, as they stand right now, is pretty much where they're at. So, take a look, tell you the cards, give you some ideas as far as how you can use them if you're not already using them. Kind of some ideas with neutrals that exist out there, things that you can kind of mishmash, and what you can do when you see these cards. Whether they're worth chasing and picking up, or they're worth passing on if you see them in the shop. So we're going to start with the Warlords first. We're going to talk about Corswain here. Now, I have not played Corswain since release, so I understand that he's pretty good. He's got a solid ability. Pay 200 to gain one attack, and he can act again, meaning he can pump up his attack multiples. That gives him a very large lethal range. Late game, he can dish out a lot of damage in one stroke and wrap things up. On top of that, he has high initiative, which is very nice for the Dark Angels because you can get that board superiority. They have troops, they want board superiority. And then he's got Duelist Triumph. Now, Duelist Triumph is a really powerful card which further heightens his board superiority. It gives him first strike, it gives him +2/+0. This is really good because for 2 energy, he basically becomes a 3/0 a 4/0 with first strike, right? And that's just with 2 energy for free, and beyond that, he can increase it. Now he can either use that to destroy a very large troop that you've invested resources in, or he can use that to initiate lethal damage on your Warlord. Either which way, it's very powerful. It should not be underestimated. Now, as I said, I haven't played him since release. When the Dark Angels first came out, I did not have a very big Dark Angels collection. Didn't really have a feel yet for the faction, and at the time, the faction itself had not received several patches and balances, but he is in a fairly decent spot. He continues to see play in Terra, kind of waxing and waning depending on the needs of the board and the aggro, but he can put out damage. So as far as a Warlord goes, he's a very good Warlord to start with the Dark Angels. He's straightforward. He can help gain you board edge, or he can give you lethal. That's really what you need with a Warlord, some flexibility, and that's nice. So, good Warlord for the epic slot. Personally, I like Ferrith Redloss more. I've played Redloss a lot more. I've had my deck with the Hexagrammaton Bomb. I shared that right after Redloss became out, after we picked him up from the event, because I had some ideas for what I want to do, and at the time, and now, I have the entire Dark Angels collection, so I have all those tools at my disposal. Now, make no mistake, that particular deck uses some high rarity cards, a lot of epics and a lot of legendaries. I think you could play Redloss without those cards, though he certainly does want to use something to give his endgame. His ability being a random damage on the surface doesn't look fantastic. Pay 2 to deal 2 to a random enemy and then 1 to adjacent units. And depending on how many units your opponent's putting on the board, that ability can lose potency. However, for matchups such as facing Astalon or any defenders of Caliban who have got troops that have got duplicitous, this is a great ability because it allows your Warlord to still affect those duplicitous troops and threaten those duplicitous troops because his ability is random. In addition, this kind of helps to get past ward and stealth. It's not a bad ability. It doesn't quite have as much accuracy as similar abilities have had, but it fuels nicely with some of the other cards within the faction, whether they are damage-dealing tactics, the Eschaton Imperative, which is just nice. That's the bomb. That I mean, he's very nice. He doesn't have a special card, but he's consistent. He offers damage. He's dealing damage. And really, when we get done looking at all the warlords here, Corswain has got the ability to control the board and do heightened damage. But you don't have any warlords aside from Red Loss who can pay to just deal damage. He doesn't have to directly engage or face strike, and that's nice. So I personally like Red Loss more. Character-wise, I really don't know either of these characters too much. I've seen Red Loss a couple times. I understand Corswain has got some Night Lord tallies on his sword that he left in a Primarch spine. And if that's cool points for you, then that's pretty cool. Red Loss is he's commander of the Dreadwing, and the Dreadwing are pretty metal. They're pretty metal. Let's talk about Lionel Johnson. Man, I haven't played him near as much, and I'll tell you what, I played 19 games. I could probably play another 20 games, and I probably am still going to get the same result. He can have some amazing late game potential. I think prior to the draft mode, Lionel Johnson was a fantastic event warlord. I think he still is, because he has this ability which allows you to basically choose a wing and create a random troop from that wing. And if you have a good understanding of the Dark Angels card pool, Dreadwing, Deathwing, you know what you can create, and you get some great options. You can do that all game long. It costs you 2 energy. The downside is that's 2 energy. You're not getting anything for that turn. There's no aggressiveness. So if your opponent pushes the envelope or starts putting out troops that you have to respond to, you have a warlord who cannot do that, or at the risk of losing his advantage for the later game, he has to give that up, and that's very tricky. He has the Dark Angel card pool supporting him, and that's really where these victories come from. It's very close, and you can talk to anybody who's played Lionel Johnson. 50% is probably on par. You might get 51, 52%. But those games are going to be won just by the right comboing or skin of your teeth, sometimes a little bit of random luck from what he generates, if he's able to generate multiple Romulans or Astravels or whatever it is that you're going for. Lionel Johnson is a interesting ability. I really like the ability, but I don't think it's just refined just yet, and yet here we are. All right, it's been long enough, and this is what we've got. Now, he does have this Reckoning. This is a very nice Reckoning. It costs 14. It costs -1 when a friendly troop completes a quest. And quest is the mechanic that triggers for the Dark Angels. Some fantastic artwork. That's actually one of the better pictures of Johnson that I enjoy. And then he becomes the Lion, right? The Lion has got 3 attack base. And for 2 energy, he gets +1/+1 to adjacent troops. If he controls no troops, he draws a card and he can act again, which is great because basically at 10 energy, you can draw a whole bunch of cards. Okay, I mean, it's going to get you so much, but if you pay 2, draw a troop, drop a troop, pay 2, pump it up, pay 2, pump it up, and then attack, it's very nice. Very nice. You don't even have to attack. You could just pump up that troop. And he has got a lot of frontline available to him. And the fact is, odds are very high that you're going to have troops on the board. So that's a nice ability. It's not broken by any means. It doesn't deal damage. Again, this is a Reckoning ability that doesn't deal damage. He's got 3 attack, but he doesn't have any way to directly improve his attack. He's going to be dealing damage by his troops using very overstated Dark Angel cards to do the majority of the damage. On top of that, you've got to complete 4+ quests to get this Reckoning to go off. In all of those 19 games, I got his Reckoning to go off 1 time, and I never used it. I got it to basically give me the 8 health I needed to stay alive in the game for 1 more turn, and that was it. Didn't use his ability at all. Now, that might be the exception, but I really don't think it is. I think it's a hard Reckoning to get. I don't think it's as rewarding or fantastic. It's powerful, but it's not top tier by any means. Added to that, this ability here, which is a good ability but doesn't do a whole lot, and it shifts his momentum. You really have a Primarch who could be better. But he's a Primarch, so don't take that wrong. I mean, like he's as far as legendary goes, if you see him in the shop or you get him in the crate, Congratulations. That's good to have. In terms of comparison to the Dark Angels Warlords, Johnson is sitting in the back seat right now. He just does not have the stuff, which is unfortunate. Now, I talked about Ferris Red Loss. I really enjoy Red Loss. I equally enjoy Nemiel. I also have a Nemiel deck out. I've played a lot more games with Nemiel because Nemiel, again, I was also playing Nemiel on release. I played Corswain, and I played Nemiel. And I played a lot more Nemiel because I was playing with neutrals, because I didn't have a whole lot of Dark Angels cards, so I was playing with neutrals. Nemiel has got this ability that gives +1/+1 to 2 random troops. That does not have to be Dark Angels, so he's very open to comboing with neutral cards. So I was experimenting with that. Gradually, I got my Dark Angels card pool up, and the win rate on him increased dramatically by incorporating many more Dark Angels cards. Now, he doesn't have to play that way, but the faction itself just fuels Dark Angels, and it makes it very easy. He's got a really good ability, and if you can keep up and pick up the steam here to give that +1/+1 to 2 random troops in your hand every turn, those bonuses just stack and pay dividends. This is a great warlord. Now, yeah, he's got 30 health, so you have to include some additional healing, but as I said, the Dark Angels have got a bevy of frontline troops, as we'll see, as well as ways to heal. And if you've got +1/+1 times 2 or 3 times on an Ecker or on some other troop that's got frontline, or a way to heal you because of a quest, Nemiel can stick around for a while. You do have to play him smart, but he can be played very well. Drill Sight is a key card for Nemiel. It allows you to use his ability and play a troop in the same turn if necessary. So, great warlord. Personally, I'm enjoying Red Loss a little bit more than Nemiel, but I enjoy them a lot. I really should get back to Corswain and give him a go now that I've got all the cards here. Corswain is, I think, the player preference in general. I think, again, he's very easy, very flexible in terms of how he can operate. You can run troops, you can run damage, you can run Forbidden Secret and go that way and keep Corswain alive for the end game. Either which way, you're going to have fun with Corswain. Red Loss and Nemiel you're going to have fun with, but you do have to know what you're doing in deck construction, and that is important. Johnson, you might have fun, but you won't have as much fun as you will playing the other three. So in terms of top tier, or top tier is a terrible term to use here, just in terms of the better warlord, Corswain is going to win out. Red Loss and Nemiel really come down to player preference. Do you want to deal damage and combo, or do you want to build overpowered troops and win that way? Neither way is wrong. Now, Always on Duty is a nice tactic. I'm finding much more use for this in events than I do in standard games. Standard games, for one, you're giving a frontline and a +1/+1 to a friendly troop. That's actually not bad. For the buff that it is, for 1 energy, you're getting a fairly decent stat exchange. In addition, if they have completed a quest, if they've triggered their quest, you give them the ability to have them do that a second time. I've had that pay off a couple times in events where I have used that with a operator decor twice in 2 rounds and buffed up a troop very nicely. On the other hand, just being able to throw this on late game and make a large Dark Angels troop that has already been statted up to a 12/12, give him an additional +1/+1 and frontline on top of that is nice. Does this go in every deck? Probably not. In events, it's very useful. You might find a way to squeeze one of it in your deck, but I think as time goes on, especially if you don't have too many troops that are doing quests, you may just naturally pass on it. But if you're looking for ways to give yourself a little bit more frontline for 1 energy, that's actually not that bad. And there really isn't too many cards in the game that give frontline to a troop. There really isn't. I mean, I could think of one off the top of my hand, the top of my iron hand. That's it. And this is by comparison, this gives it to all your troops in Survivor 1, but then you have this terrible drawback. You don't have that at all with the Dark Angels card. They're just always on duty, man. That's just it. Forbidden Secret. Boy, this does not go in every Dark Angels deck. If you see this in the shop, and it's been in the shop as of today when I'm doing this video, you can pass on it. unless you are building to go specifically to get this hidden quest activated early on, you're not going to get anything from it. It's very hard to do. The Forbidden Quest secret, what it does is you choose a quest. Now, your Warlord has a set of secret quests that he can do. Heal your Warlord 5 times, destroy or attack enemy troops 5 times, play troops that with a cost or stats attack higher than 5 times. It's something like that. It's really ties into 3 different factors. Now, once you trigger that, you get an option for 3 quests. Now, those are just not here. They're not available for us to look at. So I'll tell you what they are based off of the last time that I can remember. One of them is you give your Warlord relentless deal 5 damage to a random unit. Another one is give your enemy warlords sentenced 2. That's just a permanent sentence 2 on your enemy warlord. There's another one that reduces all the troops in your deck and hand by 2 or 3 or 4 maybe. I don't know. I don't know because I don't use the Forbidden Secret a whole lot because it's so hard to execute. It's so hard to pull it off. And then when you pull it off, these cards that I'm naming that I can't show you, you don't even get to play them. Like, they cost additional energy. So you play it, you get a card, and then you got to get more energy to play that card again to get that effect. And some of them, like, the initial design was that when you created your quest, then that card, that instead of it going to your hand, actually went into your deck, and you'd have to draw it. They changed that, thank goodness, but it still is very clunky, and that is by design currently. So this is not something that you build around. It's nice that it starts in your hand, but sometimes that's a drawback, especially if you're playing with Johnson. You shouldn't play that. He's already got a reduced hand size. This is just holding you back. This is a much better card in one of these other guys. Maybe even Nemiel, you would think, because he starts with an extra card. No. He's Nemiel doing Forbidden Quest secrets. It doesn't work. Trust me. You're better off just ignoring that altogether. Now, Legionary Boreal starts out as a 1/1 sneak attack. He's a Ravenwing and he's flank. Ravenwing is just a trait, but it combos with a lot of cards. I did a video for recruit levels in terms of explaining what the wings were for the Dark Angels. 1/1 doesn't seem too impressive, but as we've shown, and as we've indicated, you have got troops, you've got warlords, you've got ways to quickly buff the stats of those units. And often when you see Boreal played, he's typically coming out at a 3/3 or higher sneak attack flank, which is great. He doesn't go in every deck. There are some decks that I don't put him in. I don't have him in Red Loss for a reason, but he is in Nemiel. He's very easy. Late game, if I've enhanced him over the course of 3 or 4 turns, he comes out at a 5/5 flanking for 1 energy, and I can still play a lot more cards to help gain board edge. That's a very nice play. I really like this card. It's a solid rare. There's nothing wrong with it. The only downside with it is if you create it late game and you don't have anything to go with it to enhance its ability, then it kind of hurts you. You really want Legionary Boreal in your hand early on so he can get stronger as the game progresses, as opposed to late when he's just not going to have the strength. So, Brothers in Arms. Now, this card initially I passed over, and this is actually not a bad card. As a one-of, especially if you're building a specific deck, you're looking for a certain troop, right? Choose a wing, draw a troop from your deck of that chosen wing, and give it +1/+1. In some of your builds, you might only have 1 Ravenwing troop, right? You might only have 1 Dreadwing troop. You might only have 1 Deathwing troop. And if you can use that card to guarantee that you're going to get that card, give it +1/+1 in addition to putting it in your hand, that's very nice. Especially early on in, like, if you don't have any 2-drop troops in your hand starting game, but you have Brothers of Arms, you can draw and guarantee that you're going to get a 3-drop, maybe, that's also going to have increased stats, and you're going to play it at a better level on your next turn. That's just for beginners. This is very good. I use this in my Fair Thread Loss Hexagrammaton bomb deck, and it works very nicely for me to grab Astrovel, get a stat increased Astrovel, and then play Astrovel down the road who can increase more stats. I like this card. Does it go in every deck? Again, no, it does not. And it definitely shouldn't go in your deck blindly. This is one of those cards that you really need to look at your deck and decide why you're putting it in your deck. If you're just putting this in there just to draw a troop and give it +1/+1, but you have a bunch of the same troops, all Deathwing, for instance, you might actually be better off playing the Unbroken Vow. Just because it's going to draw you a card guaranteed and give you +1/+1 to all Dark Angels in your hand. It costs a little bit more, but that's just the nature of it. But if you're going for a specific combo, or you have very few low-cost troops, this is a better choice. Captain Asterisk, pretty basic. Rally, draw, and Astartes from your deck. There's nothing wrong with that. He can come out early game. He's good for you to get an Astartes. You're getting more Astartes in your decks to enhance and bolster the stats of. Late game, he can be a high-cost card if he's been enhanced himself, as well as drawing you an Astartes and filling your deck. This is not a bad card to have. This is very nice, especially in events. He's very handy. In deck construction himself, not so much. He's nice if you've created him with Johnson, but he's not required. Your main 2-drop is going to be Operator Decor, and we're going to get to him in just a second. You'll see why. Asterisk is not bad. For a common, he's very nice, but he's not something that you need to have. Eventually, you will replace him. Now, hunt them down. This is a great tactic if you have a lot of Ravenwing in your deck. If you do not have Ravenwing in your deck, it's okay. It gives flank to a friendly Dark Angels troop. That's good because it can be Dark Angels Astartes or Dark Angels vehicles. But the extra power really is if you are giving it to a Ravenwing, because then that's going to give that Ravenwing troop a 2 stat increase. So that Legionary Boreal, who comes out at 1/1, let's just say he hasn't been enhanced with any other cards, you can give him hunt down. He's already got flank. I mean, this is a bad play. Don't get me wrong, this is a bad play, but if you had to, you could give him hunt down and suddenly he's a 3/3. I would much rather give it off of something more like these guys here, the Mordwin Squad, or even the Swift Wrath Speeders. Make these guys a 6/5 flank. It's a great card. If you don't have a lot of Ravenwing, though, don't rely too heavily on it. Consider some other options. But if you're going Ravenwing, you can't go wrong. This is a good, at least one of in your deck for just that extra little pinch to help secure the board. Now, we talked about Operator Core. Why is this guy the best 2-drop? Well, he's a 2-drop. He's 2/3, which right alone, the stats are already better than our 2/2. Better than our 2/2 Captain Asterisk, as well as better than our 2/2 Zarian Squad, right? He's got a quest. He gives +2/+2 to a random Dark Angels troop in your hand. Now, if you can get him out first turn, and you can trigger the quest, deal damage to your enemy Warlord, unless your opponent has got a Seek and Destroy or a Warlord who has a deal 3 damage to an enemy troop ability, you're going to get that quest off. You're going to get that quest off very nicely, and then if you've got Dark Angels troops in your hand, doesn't matter if it's a vehicle or Astartes, one of them is going to get a +2/+2 buff. And that is nice. That's a great start. If you follow up with that on your next turn with a 5/5 Adravian, okay, that's not bad, but how about a 5/5 Peligr? Or down the road, a 5/5 Ezerfell with a counterattack. 5/7. Decor can set pace, and that's one reason why Corswain is so good, because he has got that high initiative, which really increases your chances of landing a sticky Decor who's going to perform and get his quest off. So yes, great card. This is a rare that you want to have in your deck. Whether you're playing Astartes or not, it's Dark Angels troops. Now, if you don't have any Dark Angels troops, as I said early on, I was playing a lot of neutrals with Nemiel. Decor is not going to do a whole lot for you, but eventually, if you make that shift to Dark Angels troops, Decor is the way to go. Now, Redemption is not to be overlooked. I have got one of these in my Nemiel. I wish I could get a second one in. I just can't squeeze it. But this is a great late-game surprise. Come from behind. 2 energy to heal 2 to your Warlord doesn't seem like a whole lot. It's those additional +1s for each troop you control. That is really where it comes into play, because if you have control 3 troops, you're paying 2 to heal 5. That's nice. What if you have 4 troops? You're paying 2 to heal 6. It can surprise your opponent, and the fact that it costs 2 energy is really what gives you that room. Late game, you can play 2 or 3 troops and still have enough energy to play Redemption. And that is going to surprise your opponent, because maybe they're closing in on lethal, and they think, okay, I've just got 1 more turn, I can get him down, and I can use these tactics, or I can do a face strike, you can attack with this troop. But then you play several troops, you play Redemption, you pull away from the lethal range, and in addition to that, you now have troops that they have to respond to. This is a great, not only come from behind card, this is a great surprise card. The Defenders of Caliban have got the counterpart to this, which works the exact same way in a surprise fashion. These are good cards. If you are playing with Forbidden Secret Corswain, you definitely want that card in your deck. There's no doubt about it. You could probably make it work in Johnson easily too, given the fact that he's going to be creating troops throughout the course of the game. But it's very handy for Nemiel because he has that 30 health. So it's very handy to give him some room. Redemption is a very nice common card. Storm Eagle Strike is not bad in the fact that you're paying 2 to deal 2 damage. The fact that if you control a Ravenwing, you also stun the target is really where you get the extra juice, the extra money, the extra pain, as it were. But if you don't have a lot of Ravenwing in your deck, then Storm Eagle Strike is probably not great. It's not worth considering. Maybe your 2 energy is better spent on a Redemption or another troop or a different tactic altogether. Maybe it's better spent on a command bridge or a T'Cholka. Am I saying that right? Maybe I loosen the tongue here. T'Cholcha engine, which is also Dark Angel-y themed, to go get you a troop. So consider how your deck is built before you consider this card. It's not bad as a 1-of. I have 1 of it in my Red Loss because I have a lot of Ravenwing. I have 2 of it in my Nemiel because I have a lot more Ravenwing. I don't have any in my Johnson deck, even though I have Ravenwing. I don't. I gotta get bodies on the board. I gotta use his ability to pull troops. I can't afford to pay energy to deal damage, and I don't want to stun targets if I can straight outright destroy them. But it works much better for Red Loss and Nemiel because of the builds I have for them. Zarian Squad, I like the artwork. First off, I love the artwork. I love that comic book style that they've got on some cards. We're going to see a few more of those. Zarian Assault Squad, pretty basic, 2/2, not fantastic, unstoppable. Okay, it has a quest though. And early or late game, Zarian Assault Squad can be very annoying to your opponent if you are able to properly predict the quests. All right, early game, if you pick, deal damage to your enemy warlord and your opponent attacks it, you get a free Zarian Squad back in your hand. Late game, be targeted by a tactic. Your opponent deals a tactic to Zarian Squad, you get a free Zarian Squad. It's a low enough cost troop that you can enhance it over the course of a game, and late game drop a 7/7 Zarian Squad who still has got a quest that creates another 2/2 in your hand. This is a troop that keeps on giving as long as you pick the quest accordingly. I like this troop a lot. In the end, Decor is still superior to Zarian Squad because he's going to stay on the board with that 3 health normally, but Zarian Squad works well for Forbidden Secret. It works very well for Lionel Johnson's Reckoning. And it works well just to give you some late game options to paint on your build. I think Zarian Squads tend to shine a lot more for me in event games where my troop selection is already limited, and just having a constant flow of cheap bodies is never a bad thing. Adravian Moors is a fantastic epic. These guys are worth picking up. These guys are a Deathwing here. Frontline, very low cost, 3/3, not great, right? Quest, heal your warlord by an amount equal to this troop's attack. And that's really where they turn up the volume, because what they've got here is they've got a 3/3 that can quickly become a 5/5, 4/4, other cards that can increase the stats. I mean, Adravian Moors are not something you play second turn. Adravian Moors are something that you play towards the mid or end game as a 7/7 frontline that your opponent has to deal with, and if they don't do it the right way, your Warlord heals 7. Dravian Wars are very nice for that reason. So, pick them up when you see them because you will not regret it. Although, I'm just looking at this artwork here, and it just looks like he's holding this gun weird. Like, I mean, if you've got a big enough screen and you take a look at that, you'll see what I'm looking at. It looks like his hand's out here, but the gun is pointed this way. I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like that part. The hand could get some rework here. So, anyways, that's just me being picky on third glance at the card. Mastery the Blade, I don't like. I won't lie. I mean, First Strike is nice, and +2/+0 to a friendly troop it gives huge first strike lethal range, especially a way to lock the board. But I feel like if you've already got a Warlord who's like Corswain and you've got his duelist ability, you don't need Mastery of the Blade. I feel if you've got high enough stat troops, you really don't want the first strike option anyways. You're going to want to just deal damage and trigger quests. And for 3 energy, I would rather play a troop or use an ability. This just doesn't sing to me for whatever reason. I don't know. I could be wrong. If you're using this card effectively, let me know, because for me, I see it in events once or twice, but usually I would rather have this Hunt Them Down to give a troop flank and a +2/+2 than I would give a troop that's on the board First Strike and +2/+0. I like Zarian Squad. I really like these guys, especially if you are able to pump them up with a Hunt Them Down or with Warlords who've already increasing the cost or the stats of them in your hand. And, you know, for 7 energy, you drop a Zarian Squad, you play Hunt Them Down, and you use their ability, and you deal 7 or 8 damage to troops. And you now have a massive statted Zarian Squad on the board that your opponent can't ignore or has to accept the fact that every turn they're going to take that damage. This is just really good. Now, if you can't get the momentum off, it's going to hurt. If this troop gets jammed, it's really going to hurt. Yeah, Sabotage. Sabotage. Sabotage is the card that the Dark Angels faction as a whole loathes. It's taken the wind out of my sails as Nemiel many, many times. It's very powerful. But if this guy sticks and his stats have been increased to a 5/7, and every turn you can pay 2 to deal 5 damage to anything. I mean, this is not just to a troop. This is to a troop, to a Warlord. Great card. But if you're not building a deck that is designed to enhance the stats of your troops, then Mordwin is not going to do anything for you. They really shine in decks that are aimed to increase the stats of your troops. So keep that in mind. Peligr Marner. This guy is a great legendary. This is probably the easiest legendary for you to play in the faction. 3 energy. Boom. Play it, choose a wing, give +1/+1 to all troops from that wing in your hand and in your deck. You have a 3/3 body on the board, and immediately all of your Deathwing are +1/+1 for the rest of the game. Okay, what's not to like about that? I have my Ravenwing, Dreadwing. The only downside is if you're not playing with a whole lot of wings, but that's very hard to do because so many of them are good. Just a great, easy to play legendary. Solid. He's not a wing himself, so he can't enhance, other non-wing troops. But as I mentioned, if you're building your deck accordingly and you get Peligr on second turn, you're off to a good start. Principia Bellicosa, I like this. It's kind of like the Unbreakable Focus for the Emperor's Children, except it is for the Dark Angels. You choose a wing. Your troops from that wing get +2/+2. So instead of needing perfection, you're going with your Deathwing. Deathwing all get +2/+2. Your other troops are going to get +1/+1. Regardless, all of your troops are getting a buff. But if you're not playing with a lot of wing troops, or you're playing with a lot of neutrals, then Principia Bellicosa is not fantastic. In addition, I would argue Principia Bellicosa is not necessary for Nemiel, because Nemiel is already enhancing his troops before he even plays them. However, for Lionel Johnson, Corswain, Ferrith Redloss, if they're playing troops, this is a great card to increase the stats of the troops that you already have on the board. Depending on the cards that you have available to you, there are several Astartes who just do this for free or do this better. You have Warlords who do this better. But if you're building up a faction, you don't have too many of them, and this is a good common to start with. It doesn't give them flank. If you have one troop on the board, it's not as good. But if you've got 2 or 3 troops on the board, everything getting the buff is very good. So you've got to weigh out the pacing of your deck. But this is not a bad card as it is. Prisoner Custody. Boy, I love the artwork for this, first off. Second off, this is a card that I did the reveal for, the spoiler for. I still stand by the fact that this is a game-changing card. This is a card that anybody who has had this played on them at the right time has lamented it. I have had many Night Haunter games where the opponent just quit after Prisoner Custody was placed upon him. Give Counterattack to an enemy until it receives damage. Now, that's harder to do with some opponents. World Eaters and Ruinstorm have a lot of ways to damage their own Warlords. There's a lot of Warlords who play with rally troops that can deal damage to just any unit. So that's very easy to do to damage their own Warlord. If you have troops your opponent can damage, or troops that you have to get rid of some way around the way that are going to take damage, the Prisoner Custody is tricky to navigate around. But if you play it right, it's good to have as a 1-of in a deck. 2-of is too much. You should never really have 2. You can't attack that was a status that simply cannot be removed except for jam, right? So unless your opponent can sabotage their own units, again, sabotage, they're not going to be able to get rid of that can attack. And if you put this on a Warlord, such as Conrad Kerr's Night Haunter, that's it. He's going to sit there and he's going to try to use every other tool that that is in his arsenal to get away from you, but all the while you're just going to build up a massive, powerful board that he won't be able to do anything about, and then you can finish him off. Prisoner Custody is a very strong card, but it has to be played appropriately. Do you need more than one? I really don't think you do. But if you don't have this, pick one up. You will not regret it. Seraphim Spikes is probably one of the Dark Angels cards I don't like. It's Ravenwing. It's got a great rally. And that's where it fools you. All enemies lose stealth. That's it. This guy doesn't do anything else. For 1 energy, you get to put him back up into your hand. So for 1 energy, you get to return your stealth removal on your next turn. This guy doesn't have flank. He doesn't deal damage. He doesn't stun anything. That's all he does. It's very nice if you are playing Lionel Johnson and you're facing a Warlord or a faction who has a lot of stealth at their disposal. You know that you can go into the Ravenwing and try to randomly create one of these guys, and you might get lucky. But what you do with them and how you use them is really where you have to be tricky. They're just not great. I would rather deal random damage or find ways to hard remove things than just randomly have all enemies lose stealth. Now, by comparison, this is a better card than Skitarii Protector in the fact that it causes all enemies to lose stealth versus 1 random unit. But this doesn't have frontline. This doesn't have survivor. This doesn't do anything for you. So I just dislike it. I hear a lot of people playing Israfel. I don't. And I think that's just me. I think he's really good, and I think if you're playing Corswain, maybe that's where he's at. 0 energy, choose a wing, reduced by 2 the cost of troops from that wing in your hand. That's a great ability. Without a doubt, if you've got even if you've only got 2 troops in your deck, in your hand, for free, you get to reduce the cost of them by 2. And if they're higher cost troops that it costs 5 or 6, that's going to be great because then you can play them that turn, maybe even play both of them at the same time. That's just an amazing ability. personally, I'd rather do damage, but I understand why people like this guy. I just don't put him in my decks. But that doesn't mean that he's a bad card. I think why I pass over him typically is because just naturally I'm drawn to the fact that he's below 4 attack, so he's susceptible to Ambassador Melgator, even though, as I said, there's so many ways to enhance the stats of cards that you're drawing, right? He's not a wing troop, so you can't pull him with Brothers in Arms, but you can put Always on Duty. You can use Nemiel. There's other ways to enhance his stats, Principia Bellicosa, whatever the case may be. Lexicon of Glory. It's pretty straightforward. Deal 4 or heal 4. I have actually used the heal 4 portion more times than I like to admit. This is heal 4 to a friendly troop, not to a warlord. But when you're able to heal 4 to a troop that has got a very large attack, or is a frontline troop, or has got a battle honor or a quest available to them, that gives them much more options. Lexicon of Glory is a great card. I don't think you would not want 2 of these in your deck. You should have 2. Just the ability to just close a game out by dealing 4 damage should never be overlooked. It's 4 for 4 or healing 4. And I think that's fair. This is a great card. It's a good rare. Pick it up if you don't have it. If you do have it, make sure it's in your deck, because you will not. You'll be happy that you have it. I don't like these guys. These guys work in... I like the artwork, don't get me wrong. But these guys work in... It kind of looks like... It's got like a sour... Like squinting into the sunlight. These guys work in events, just for the simple fact that events are kind of a mixed bag right now. But a 4/4, this is like the worst Deathwing unit that Lionel Johnson can create. They don't do anything for you the turn that they come in. They don't have frontline. They don't have quest. They've got to stick around. Then you've got to pay 2 energy to give +1/+1 to troops from that wing in your hand and in play, which is a decent ability. It can affect him. If you pick Deathwing, he'll become a 5/5, and all the Deathwing will get enhanced too. But that's all he does. I just rather pick other Deathwing troops, but usually this is the one that ends up getting generated if I use him with Lionel Johnson. Now this card here this is a great flanker. This is a 4/3. As I've already showed, there's ways to very easily increase the stats of this card, right? It's already got flank, sure, but if you make it a 6/5, or you used Nemiel to enhance it over the course of several turns, it's a powerful flanker. And then on top of that, if you've got a Deathwing, which is very easy to do, this gains Cleave 2. So the options that it has to clear out boards, very nice. It has 4 cost, little less stats on the initial run, right? It's a 4/3 for 4. By comparison, the Thousand Suns, which have got a flanking that deals Cleave 2, is a 5 cost, which is a 3 for 5. But Cost Speeder, they've got Quick Blood, right, to enhance it. That's all the Thousand Suns have got. Dark Angels have got so many ways to enhance the stats of this 4/3 that it's very easy to play the 4/3 and still have it survive on the board. That is a must. You want to have 2 of those in your deck. There's just no reason not to. Unbroken Vow as a 1-of is nice. You're drawing a card. You're giving +1 to all Dark Angels troops in your hand, which works for non-wing troops. It works for vehicles. This is a good tactic. But do not fall into the trap of having too many cards that draw and increase the stats, because then you'll have a handful of tactics, and you'll have 1 troop that you're enhancing that 1 troop, but you're not getting any other substantial things. So watch how you build your deck. Unbroken Vow is great, but don't have 2 Unbroken Vows and 2 Brothers in Arms and 2 Hunt Them Downs. You'll water down the chances of you actually having a handful of Astartes that would benefit from 1 Unbroken Vow. Keep that in mind. That is much more of a deck construction tip, but that's how I view it. I mean, the Dark Angels are definitely you are better off the more you consider how you are building your deck for them, if that makes any sense. Now, Secaris Interrupters, these guys are nice. With the quest, it really throws people for a loop, right? They deal 5 damage to a random enemy troop. So your opponent's got the choice. Do I hit it with a tactic? Is it going to destroy this troop? Do I face strike it? Is it going to destroy the troop? What do I do? These guys are a nice curveball that you can throw your opponent. And for 4 energy, that's a relatively easy cost curveball. I think you go a little bit higher with the Dreadwing Proctor for 5, but for 4, that's not a bad call. It's a Dreadwing, and as a result, in my Hexagrammaton deck, I don't take it because I take just Astrovel. But I will acquiesce that it's a good card, and I think if you're going for a deck that mixes things up, or if you create this with Lionel Johnson, this is a good card to have. So I do like this. The quest is, again, it's a curveball. It's not something to rely on. It's something to kind of make your opponent think how they are going to play or execute their next turn. Now, Astrovel is just there's no work here. You play him, all your starties are +1/+1. He survives, you get that Battle Honor off. He's going to get +1/+1 to all your starties. He's a Dreadwing. He's a very good cost card. This is just a great card. This is an epic. This is probably, in my opinion, this is my favorite epic in the faction. This is a must-have. This is one that you want to pick up. Do not pass on this card. Now, if you're not running a starties, if you're running neutrals, then that's one reason why you wouldn't have them in your deck. But I found once I had 2 Astrovels, the success rate on my Nemiel and my red loss was much, much higher. Again, playing with high faction cards versus low faction cards, I got a better result. I think that's very nice about the Dark Angels in general, is they gel very well, but thematically, they don't respond well to outsiders. So I like that. Dreadwing Proctor is another one of those cards that's kind of a curveball. Not as much, but still. He's a 5/5 for 5. That's a solid cost, solid troop. He's got that quest, deal 2 damage to all enemies. Now, against a solo warlord, this isn't going to be too much. Your warlord is going to their warlords can take an extra 2 damage, whether they hit him with a tactic or face strike, whatever it is. But against opponents who have got a lot of troops on the board, who want to put troops on the board, Dreadwing Proctor is a problem. Is he great? It's hard to say. Personally, if I had a 5-cost card, it's going to be Astrovel. Ramiel is a great 5-cost, and Namet Terminators are my go-tos. I prefer them over Dreadwing Proctor, but I cannot dispute that Dreadwing Proctor is a solid card. Eschaton Imperative. Boy, this card, when it first came out, was deal 2 damage to all enemies, and then for each hit killed, you drew a card. It was okay. The Dark Angels, I guess, kind of needed it, but it didn't do anything for you. Eschaton Imperative, as it is now, does a lot for you, because for each unit killed, it lowers the cost of Dark Angels troops, which can include vehicles, by 1. If you wipe out a board full of Caliban Jaegers, you have got yourself all of your Dark Angels troops at -5 or 6 cost. It's a beautiful thing. In addition to dealing 2 damage to everything. This is just a great card. This turns the tides of battle. This is the card, this is the tactic, the 5 energy play that you really have to watch out for when you're facing the Dark Angels, in the same way that you do when you're fighting the Thousand Suns and they've got 8 psych or energy saved up and you have to be mindful of that astral warfare. You really have to play with this Eschaton Imperative. Is it worth the risk? Is it worth the reward? As a Dark Angels player, always look for the option, the right moment to play Eschaton Imperative. Don't play it too early and lose out, but don't hold on to it too late till it's not going to do you enough. So keep that in mind. This is a great card, though. This should be at least a one of in all Dark Angels decks. There's just no reason not to. Yeah, definitely a one of, because he is a legendary, is Night Praetor Ramiel. Solid card. 4/6. He used to be a 3/5 or 3/6. I can't recall if his health was 6, but rally, deal damage to an enemy troop equal to this troop's attack, which can very quickly become a 5, 6, 7. He's a Deathwing on top of that, so any way that you've got to enhance wings, such as Peligr Marner or Brothers in Arms, or Unbroken Vow is going to enhance this guy. It's going to target him, it's going to build him up, and he can lay out a troop all by himself. Now, if your opponent has got troops with Ward or Survivor, then it gets a little bit problematic. But for 5 costs, that's a great ability. It's a strong troop. I think he's very nice. I like this. This is a good legendary to have. In terms of legendaries to have, it's a hard toss-up between Peligr and Ramiel. I would say Ramiel over Peligr, only for the simple fact that that immediate value to deal damage and help control board. Ramiel was not the last legendary I had, but when I got him, I could feel the difference in my decks. That extra turn where I could play 5 and just deal 5 and not have to worry about attacking with a troop and sacrificing damage to my enemy warlord. I could just play Ramiel and take care of it. I enjoyed that. So I would put Ramiel as the number 1 legendary, Marner as a close second. Nama Terminators are a strong common. Force 5 for 5 energy frontline. We've seen that before on a lot of frontline troops. But they're Deathwing, which means that they can be enhanced by all of the cards that target wings. They also have a quest, heal 2 to your other units. These guys are nice. These guys are pretty good. They're solid. I like them. I have usually 2 in a deck. They very quickly can become 5/6s. That heal 2 to my warlord. That in alone of itself is worth it. I don't like Brother Titus. I love the artwork. Again, here we're going with that 90s comic book style. We've got Brother Titus. He's got quest. He gains frontline +2/+0, which is okay. Doesn't do a whole lot. He's a 4 attack. He's got 8 health, but if he's a vehicle and he gets hit by a Melt-A-Bomb and his quest was targeted, be targeted by an enemy tactic, this quest doesn't do anything. I mean, your frontline troop is still destroyed. It's not great. Titus as an event warlord is a blast to play, but Titus as a Castraferum Dreadnought, I'll pass. Now, Oathsworn Terminators, these are the Terminators that are really one step above the Nama Terminators. 4/6, so they've got 1 extra health. They cost 1 more, but rather than have a quest, they've got First Strike. And that is really where they shine, because if you're able to get these guys up to a 6 attack, even a 5 attack First Strike frontline is nice. But if they get up to 6 or 7 attack, it really shuts down your opponent's options to play troops on the board, because everything that they play is pretty much going to be First Strike eliminated by these Oathsworn Terminators. These are powerhouses. If you are playing with Nemiel, especially, I've seen it with Corswain, and definitely in event decks. It's harder to play with Johnson because he's creating them all away for sure. But I mean, if you're playing a deck that enhances your troops, Oathsworn Terminators is kind of like a soft win condition. If you can get them to stick, especially against certain opponents, you're gonna have a good time. You're gonna have a good time. This is a good card, and it's a common, too. Onyx Saber. Now, there is a trick with Onyx Saber, and this is part of the Hexagrammaton deck that I've got with my red loss, right? It's a Ravenwing. It rallies, it deals 2 damage, but if you control a Dreadwing, it deals 3 additional damage. If I play it with the Hexagrammaton, it costs 0 energy. I pull it back, I'd get a free 5 damage in addition to this 7/5 tank on the board. But that takes setup. And again, that harkens back to, it takes deck construction. You have to know what you're doing. Just throwing an Onyx Saber Strike by itself in your deck isn't going to do you anything. If you don't have any Dreadwings in your deck or in your hand, you're not going to benefit from this additional 3 damage, and then you'll just have a Ravenwing tank that deals 2 damage. Okay, it's not great, but it's something. You want that extra 3 damage. If you're looking to play tanks, Arcwater Bombard is probably arguably better. It's 1 cost more, but for the ability, if it sticks, 4 energy to deal 4 damage to a random enemy and adjacent units. That means it's your opponent's warlord if they're a solo warlord, or if there's only 2 units on the board, everything's taken 4. High cost, yes, but very effective at what it does. If you want to play vehicles and tanks, this is a good one to do. Doesn't have anything special beyond that. Doesn't have survivor, doesn't have shield, so it's susceptible to a lot of things. But in events, this thing coming out late game after you think you've dealt with troops already, or the big heavy hitters, and then they drop an Arc or Bombard, this thing locks the board, just as effective as an Oathsworn Terminator. Deathwing Protocol is the Legion's hard removal for 7 energy. It falls in line with things like the Balthazar's Sword, the Word Bearers. Balthamer's Sword, yeah. It costs 7. It destroys an enemy, but this nice ability of giving +1/+1 to 2 random troops in your hand combos great with the energy, the synergy of the faction, especially if you've already given them stats enhanced via Nemiel or via cards like Brothers in Arms or something like that. Not only do you clear the board, but then the next turn you drop this overcosted or undercosted, overstated troop. The downside is it does cost 7 energy, and that's a big thing for players when you're facing the Dark Angels to keep in mind. They have got some powerful troops. They've got a lot of ways to deal damage and pick things up, but if you're able to stick troops that they cannot hard remove or get rid of immediately with something like Romuel, they will not be able to answer you until 7 energy with the Deathwing Protocol. In addition to that, if you have initiative on them and you play a troop with your 7 energy, and on their turn they play Deathwing Protocol on their 7 energy, they haven't played anything. You have 8 energy now to play all your big guns. You have a way to bait them out. Deathwing Protocol is a very powerful hard removal. It's a very nice hard removal, but it is very susceptible to the old bait and switch. Bait your opponent into playing Deathwing Protocol, and then play more troops that they wish they could have Deathwing Protocoled. And the momentum will shift, and you will be in a better position to destroy, disrupt, whatever it is that they're going to play next, even if it has +1/+1. Knight Champion, these guys, I'm seeing the events. I don't see them in Constructed unless you don't have the full collection. When I first started playing the Dark Angels, I didn't have the full collection, and I went with Knight Champion. It's an okay quest. It reduces the cost of all the starters in your hand by 2. Downside is sometimes you get to that point in the game where you don't have any Astartes in your hand. So it doesn't do anything with ones in your deck. It doesn't increase the stats. It doesn't do anything with the troops that you have on the board. It's just a 7/7 body. Nice artwork, but I find that he kind of fizzles. So I opt out from him, especially as I got more cards and better cards. I found that I'd rather have cheaper cost cards like the Nama Terminators and the Oathsworn Terminators, who would offer me more options in controlling the board versus just a 7/7. Now, by contrast, for 8, you get the Deathwing Companions here, which are a 7/8, but they have frontline, and when you put and play a troop, it gets +2/+2. This is a legendary. This is a great legendary. This is great, especially with cards like Invincible Reason or Hexagrammaton, which can pull them back out and give you a 0 cost and allow you to play them with additional troops, and then get a whole bunch of troops that are overstated. If Deathwing Companion sticks on the board, you are going to have a very nice next turn. Now, if you don't have any troops to play with it, that is a problem. So try to balance it accordingly, but these are very good. It's a very, very good ability. Definitely. I like this quest for Venerable Oramos. I really do. Destroy random enemy troop. Again, it's another hard removal, but it's high cost. And I think it should be, don't get me wrong. I think that this should be a high cost effect on a Dreadnought, which is some solid in-house artwork. I like that. It almost looks like it's a picture of a model, but it's not. Or is it? 9/7 vehicle with a possibility of not only destroying whatever it is that it attacks, but then destroying another enemy troop if you've picked the right quest. It's good. I think it shines more in events. I don't think you're going to see it in normal play. By far, Deathwing Companions is a better card for 8 cost, but it's a legendary, so it should be, right? Knight Cenobium cost 1 more, and this seems on the first, you're like, yeah, it's a 9/9. That's really high. At quest, give +1/+1 to your other starties and play hand in deck. Okay, that's decent. Alright. Well, typically by the time you play Knights Cenobium, they're no longer a 9/9. Usually, in the games that I have them, whether it is event, whether it is with Romiel, Red Loss, or even Nemiel, by the time I play a Knight Cenobium, they typically come out as a 12/12 or a 13/13. My opponent has exhausted their hard removal options, and then I get this awesome effect that really feels like a win more ability. But given the way some games can swing, or how you can come back with a right healing effect, Knight Cenobium is sometimes that pendulum pull that is needed to lock in a win. So it feels like a win more card, but it isn't always. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to have this card in your deck. I'm just trying to explain that it is actually more useful than you think as an epic that costs 9. But it's not necessary. You could operate very nicely with a lot of your cards at the 5 and 6 cost range and not use Knight Cenobium whatsoever. However, if you get Knight Cenobium off, it's worthwhile. It's worthwhile. So if you are on the fence and you don't have it, pick one up if you can afford the gems. If you've got the 400 gems, it's not necessary, but it's worth picking up, at least to try it out. But if you're short on gems and you're not sure, hold off. You'll be fine. Invincible Reason, I haven't used this card in standard play. I've used it a lot in event games, especially prior to the draft mode, when that was part of the Slayer of Beasts deck for Lionel Johnson. This was a great play. It's a great play, especially if you've got 3 Astartes in your hand that are high cost, like an Oathsworn Terminator and the Deathwing Companions and a Knight Cenobium, and you play those all for 0. Pull those off. That's great, but it's very hard in the game, especially with desperate defense decks, to make Invincible Reason as effective. You've got to have those cards in your hand. Desperate Defense as a neutral still works very well because it pulls those 2 cards out from your deck, so they don't have to be in your hand, and they're going to get frontline, so even if they don't have frontline. Whereas if you were to play Invincible Reason, and you've got Astravel and Dreadwing, Proctor, and Romiel, which are all good cards. You play them all for free. Astravel increases the stats of all these guys. None of them have frontline. None of them are going to throw off your opponent, and if you've only got enough attack where your opponent can just still face strike you or deal tactics, Invincible Reason hasn't done you anything. Now, I'm not saying that this is a bad card. I really like it. It plays into how the Dark Angels operate. I have not found a way to make it work as well in standard play as I have in events, because events is a much tighter ship. Hexagrammaton is easier to pull off and more immediate impact, especially if you've built your deck accordingly. Again, as I've shown with the Red Loss deck. Invincible Reason is chancing on what you have in your hand versus what you have in your deck or what you've played through the course of the game. It's a good card. It can be a very powerful card, but it's not a guarantee. It's not a guarantee. If you get Invincible Reason with like a War Room, for instance, then you were saving up your hand for something big, or you had a bunch of frontline troops, then it's great. But if Invincible Reason, you pay 10 energy, and inadvertently you've got a couple of 3 cost and 2 cost guys in your hand that you lower to 0, you've robbed yourself of an awesome play. So play at your own caution. This is probably the second legendary behind Forbidden Secret that you could pass on. You do not have to have this in your decks. You don't have to have a Hexagrammaton in your decks either. Again, it's a deck decision. It's a deck build that forces these cards to be useful. Whereas Romuel and Deathwing Companions and Peligr, they're gonna be useful to you every game. Invincible Reason is not. Now Hexagrammaton is a very good card. It's rare intensive. The faction as a whole, to make the most use out of these cards, needs to have troops from all the wings, and they've got to be played and destroyed through the course of the game. They've got to die, right? They cost 0, but if you played a Deathwing and a Ravenwing and a Dreadwing, you get 3 troops for 0 that you can play and combine. And that leaves for some very nice and fun, unique options. I really like this card. It doesn't work in every game because, again, you have to get to 10 energy. But if you've built your deck to do that, it's not impossible to do. It's actually really fun to pull off. So this is a card, if you're building a deck for, you either have 2 or you have 1 with this as an alternate win condition. It is not a win condition in of itself, but it is a way to get there. You still have to build and play smart. Venerable Coriolanus, no. I mean, this is a power stat card, 10/10 shield, quest, deal 4 damage to all enemies, but it just kind of falls into that whole thing. It's a Leviathan Dreadnought. All right, that's cool. It's not a Land Raider, right? We've seen enough 10-cost Land Raiders. Not this time around. We're getting all Terminators and Dreadnoughts, baby. Just no. Like, unless he was sitting in here, you're like, oh, well, that's cool. I'll just play him with Invincible Reason. No, you can't, because says Astartes. See, he's a vehicle. That's where you struggle. Now, if you got him with Hexagrammaton, okay, that can work because he is a Dreadwing. The downside is, if you're already at 10 energy and you're playing him instead of this, you're playing it wrong. So, pass. Pass on Venerable Coriolanus if you have to have a Dreadnought in your deck. You're going to want Oramus at best. The Astartes and the Terminators are going to do the work for you. Just stick with those guys. The Dark Angels counterattack, I got to talk about this. The counterattack is one of my favorite counterattacks. This is a great counterattack. Your next Dark Angels troop, not Astartes, not infantry, not troop. Your Dark Angels troop this turn cost 1 less. And they changed that. When they changed this card to be Dark Angels specific, in addition to all the wing troops and the cards that drew wings and interacted with wings, the faction as a whole really gels together. Again, as I said, they're not friendly to outsiders. And if you build your deck and you've got all the Dark Angels cards to make it work, you can have a really good time. You can have a really synergistic deck. You can play counterattack first turn with a drill sight. You can use Nemiel's ability, and you can throw down an Adravian Moors at 4/4 or Peligr Marner at 4/4 and go from there. Or you could play Israfel on your second turn. I personally like playing Astravel for 4 energy, but depending on the Warlord and the abilities that I'm using it for, it works as well. It works with vehicles because they're Dark Angels troops. It works with Dark Angels Astartes. It is a great counterattack. Maybe not the best, but it makes it very easy to not fall behind in building a board. And the Dark Angels need that in order for them to thrive. So keep that in mind. Now, we've talked about all the cards. There's a lot of neutrals that the Dark Angels can make use of, depending on the Warlord. I've talked about Nemiel pumping up a troop like Kaizelane or Jubok Starsight. That's always a great thing, right? In addition, this Fierce Onslaught, this is a new card that's been added. Just think about giving Fierce Onslaught to something like those Terminators with the first strike, right? These Oathsworn Terminators who are already pumped up, and they're 6 attack, 8 attack. Your opponent drops 3 or 4 troops on the board. They're like, okay, you can kill one, but you can't kill them all. But you give them that new neutral where he's got Battle Honor, can act again, and yeah, he can kill them all. Lord Malkiel is a great card that lets you ramp up to play those higher cost cards. It's a legendary, but it is a good legendary to consider. Also, I like Where is it? Duke Mortimer for Nemil, because as a neutral, I can get him up to 5 attack. Ambassador Melgator. Most of the neutrals that I really like, though, come out of the Mechanicum side of things, whether it's Ambassador Melgator or it's Secretary Axiarch, or using a Nemil to then get the Sabotage Squad cost increased or Last Howl cost increased. Asteroid belts can be handy to get your energy a turn ahead so you can get to those high cost troops faster. In addition, I think Remir has got potential with that battle honor, as well as getting not the battle honor, rather the stealth. And if you can get his stats increased to like a 9/5, so he's safe from a Joker company or random defensive satellites, then you are off to the races. But the real thing that I like about the Mechanicum support for the Dark Angels, primarily Nemil, is all of the frontline that they have. That really helps keep him alive a little bit longer. These guys who are 3/4s could very come out as a 4/5s or 5/6s. Same thing goes with Vorax, increasing their stats with him, making them a 5/5 flanking with Bloodthirst is very nice. So I like that. Escape Vent is very good, especially if you've got a troop that you want to have a successful quest on, whether that's Operator Decor or it's one of those Oathsworn Terminators. Maybe it's Deathwing Companions. Guess what? They can go in the Escape Vent. That's a good card for them to have. In addition, if you need to get your troop to Cholcha Engine, to Cholcha Engine lets you get it. That's iffy because I would rather have the Brothers in Arms, but it's an option. Ecrotrez is one of those troops that if I can increase the stats of, I can get a lot more value out of it in terms of healing. And then I would probably say Watchers in the Dark are both thematic and then also very nice, not just in dealing with the to help the Dark Angels jam random non-structure enemy troops, but also helping them deal with themselves, because then you can jam those overstated Dark Angel cards that have been enhanced for whatever reason. Beyond that, I think a lot of the high cost cards really are going to come from the faction itself. If you're going to play tactics, defensive satellites seems like a good go, but why not just play Eschaton Imperative? You're going to guarantee to get 2 versus a hit or miss, and then you get this awesome secondary effect. So why play that tactic at all? I think they're so exclusive. They're so inclusive as a faction. You don't need to have those cards. You certainly can, but I think as you get a collection and you put more and more Dark Angel troops in your deck, you will find more success as they all mesh and meld together. I really enjoy the Dark Angels in the game. It took a little bit of work, and they definitely require you to have a lot of their cards to get the experience and the value out of. But once you do, you'll find a very good, solid, stable faction that can offer you a lot of options mid to late game, especially if you have built your deck right. Now that is a big thing to keep in mind. Whether you are playing with Forbidden Secret, whether you are playing for quests and reckonings, playing to enhance certain troops, or playing for combos with cards like Hexagrammaton or Invincible Reason, the Dark Angels are a faction that you really have to consider how you are building your deck and what winged troops you are including in your deck, and then playtest that out accordingly. That's probably more so than any other faction. It's harder to. You can succeed very nicely, but it's a lot easier to fail if you don't have all the pieces together just right. Now, there's no secret formula to do it. You just have to be aware as far as what you're doing and why you're doing when you're building your deck. So, I hope that's helpful. I hope this has been good for you. I hope this has been educational at the very least. I hope it's given you some food for thought. And if you have got any questions or any thoughts on these cards that you've seen, if you're playing them differently, if you've made use of Invincible Reason, let me know. Because I'm enjoying the Dark Angels. I think out of all of the factions that have come from Defenders of Caliban or the Angels of Caliban expansion, they're all good. They've all got a unique feel, and I don't dislike how they play. I do need to get back to playing a couple of these guys, though, with all the cards that I've got now. So I don't know. I don't know if I'll get Johnson to work, but I don't have bad games with him. I just am having trouble seeing where he really shines. Whereas Nemiel and Red Loss, I really feel it and I enjoy them a lot. And I don't think you can go wrong with any of those Warlords. Johnson, though, play cautiously. Alright guys, that's it for me. Until next time, keep playing Legions and we will talk to you later.